Filipinos love their food to be malasa, as in super lasa. This is not a subtle cuisine by any means. A lot of contrasting flavors, and we do that through a number of ways. One is contrast using very strong flavored fruits and vegetables in our cooking, things like mangoes or ampalaya or bananas in cooking. But another way is more subtle, and that's through the use of herbs and spices in Filipino cooking. Hi, mga kabano, it's Chris here. Now, today I'm going to talk to you about the 5 that I use more than any other spice when it comes to cooking. There are more, there's a lot more, but I'm just going to focus on the 5 that I use the most myself when it comes to cooking. The indigenous set of herbs and spices wasn't that vast, but because of all of the connection the Philippines has had with the rest of the world through trade and through colonization over several centuries, you can find that many of the spices from around the world have now been integrated into Filipino cooking. So let's get straight into it. Now, the first one I'm going to talk about today is atsuete, or Annatto seeds. Now, this originated in Central America and arrived to the Philippines via the Spanish galleon trade between New Spain and the Philippines at that time. Annatto seeds are this small, dark, reddish, hard little seed. And when you either grind that up into a powder or you can actually cook them off in some water or oil, they'll release kind of an earthy flavor but an intense reddish, orange, yellowish color into whatever it is that you're cooking. So atsuete is also known as sort of a poor man's saffron in that it will deliver a very similar coloring effect, but it's way cheaper to use than using real saffron in cooking. Now, the way that you would prepare this, for example, is if you're going to make annatto water, for example, for noodles or a broth, you would simply put your annatto seeds in a pot of boiling water, usually about a tablespoon per cup of annatto water that you want to make, and you're just going to boil that for about 3 minutes, and the water is going to take on this beautiful orange color just after a short time, and you just strain the water afterwards and catch the seeds and separate the annatto water. Similar with oil, you can do more or less the same process where you saute annatto seeds in oil and then you can subsequently use that oil for your cooking. So that's the way that we make chicken in a salad, for example, is by basting the chicken with annatto oil, and that's what gives that its yellow orangey look. And the last way that you can do it is if you've got the seeds ground up, is just to put a spoon or so into a soup, for example, and that's going to just impart the color and be a bit more grainy, I suppose, the texture of the food, because you've got ground seeds in there, but it will impart the color nonetheless. Now, in the Philippines, this is used predominantly in noodle dishes or curries, so we'll see things like pancit palabok or chicken sotanghon. Those will be colored by annatto seeds. And also for kare-kare, this is the agent that gives the iconic yellow orangish color of the Philippines' main curry, or kare-kare. So the next thing I use all the time in my Filipino cooking is laurel, or bay leaf. This has been used around the world. It's common in European cooking as well, but also surprisingly often used here in the Philippines. So laurel, when eaten directly, it's quite bitter, and for that reason it's usually used just as a pampalasa in dishes where it introduces a slight bitterness, earthiness, and a greater depth of flavor to whatever it is you're cooking. So in the Philippines, this is an ingredient that you would find in every Filipino kitchen because it's a major input to the Philippines' #1 dish, adobo. It's hard to imagine having adobo without a couple of pieces of laurel floating around that have been stewing away with the adobo in that slow cooking process. It's also able to be used, you can dry it, crush it, and make a sort of a laurel tea, and also can be used in achara. If you're making pickled papaya, for example, you might have a little bit of laurel in there also to add a bit more aroma and depth to the flavor in your achara. Now, the last thing that bay leaf can be used for is actually in kitchens to keep insects away. So they hate the smell of laurel, so you can tie little bouquets of that in certain areas, or if you have like a jar of rice or flour and you want to keep the bugs out, apparently you just put in some bay leaves into that, and that's going to persuade them to find somewhere else to eat. The next one to talk about is, of course, chilies. The Philippines isn't known as a country that likes really spicy food. I mean, outside of the Bicol region in southeastern Luzon, it's a pretty bland cuisine, or not bland in the sense that it's not flavorsome, but bland in the sense that they don't really like heat in the cooking the way you find in a lot of the neighboring Southeast, Northeast Asian countries around the Philippines. However, where it is used is sort of as a mild flavoring in Filipino cuisine to dishes. So if you think sinigang, for example, you'll have a few pieces of chili floating around in there, which impart just a little little hint of heat, but not the sort of mouth-watering, eye-popping kind of chili that you associate with the curries of Thailand or Indonesia or India. Now, there's a number of different types of chili that are grown and cultivated in the Philippines. First, you have your sili mahaba, which is the long green chili. That will also be called sili pangsigang. It's in the chili used for sinigang, and that's the most mild of the Philippine chilies. Not too spicy. It's also used to make dynamite, which is sort of the lumpia wrapped chili with meat and cheese filling, super sarap. It's hot enough that you can kind of eat the whole one with some meat and cheese around it and not completely blow your head off, although it can be a little spicy. Getting more spicy though is your siling labuyo, red bird's eye chili, and then siling bilong, which is the bell chili, which resembles sort of a habanero chili, and they are pretty deadly. Now, of course, in most parts of the Philippines, they are not used in great quantities except for Bicol, where that is the whole point. Some people eat to live. I think in Bicol, you eat to get your chili fix. I love spicy food myself, so yung mga curries katulad ng Bicol Express and laing, if you're making them proper Bicol style, they're going to be really fiery, and they're going to have a combination probably of the long green chilies, but also the more spicy sili labuyo in there to really give that a lot of kick. The next thing that I grow myself here in the Philippines and I like to use in cooking is tanglad. Tanglad or lemongrass. That's obviously used in a lot of different areas. Typically it's this sort of grass-looking bush, hence lemongrass, and the leaves, surprise, surprise, if you smell them, they smell like lemon. Very citrusy smell to it. But the part you use in cooking is this sort of some thicker stems, and you sort of pick those down near the base of the plant, trim them, and then you get this sort of stem with a bit of a bulb at the end, and they're not too thick, and you just want to bruise those with the back of a knife, and that's going to release this wonderful lemon citrusy aroma. We'll impart that to whatever you're cooking the lemongrass with. So it grows really, really well in the Philippines. And the sort of thing it's used for is you either get some and sort of bruise it, tie it up, and you put it in a dish, something like tinola. You can just boil it in there, or some of the other Filipino soups. You can put your tanglad in there, almost just like a little herb bouquet. And of course, it's used for chicken inasal as the primary flavoring ingredient there. So you'll chop that up and you'll marinate your chicken in the chopped lemongrass, which will make it really, really powerful flavor. So lemongrass is of course also used as a key ingredient for lechon, especially Cebu lechon, which some have called the best roasted pig in the world. And lemongrass is one of the critical flavors there. So you're stuffing the pig and then roasting it with a lemongrass inside, and it just beautifully flavors all of the meat and introduces this hint of citrus throughout the pork. So it goes really, really well with poultry. It goes really, really well with pork as well. And the other interesting fact about tanglad is that it is used in some parts of the Philippines as part of fertility rituals. So you get your lemongrass and you combine it with sort of some pebbles, some rice husks or rice seedlings. You tie them all together and then you go and bury that in the yard, and that's going to assure you fertility for the next year. So again, if you disdain modern science, you can use fertilizer, animal manure, or you just have to get a piece of tanglad and that will have the same effect. So try that one out if you're wondering why your crops fail. Hopefully it works for you. So the last one we'll talk about today is the pandan leaves. So these come from the pandanus or screw pine, and they're sort of a long blade-like looking leaf that can be used in culinary. You don't eat it directly. It's used primarily for adding flavor or an aromatic smell to whatever it is you're cooking. So here in the Philippines, the most common things I would use that for is making pandan rice. So you can just slip a leaf in and a little bit of coconut milk to your rice, cooking it at night, and that will just make it like a far richer experience to just regular steamed rice. And it's also used in a lot of dessert or drinks here in the Philippines. So buko juice flavored with pandan, a little milk is really nice. And you can also put some pandan leaves into sego at gulaman. So the classic Filipino merienda drink, you can add some pandan as well. And in parts, this is very lovely, fragrant. It's hard to put your finger on. It's not quite vanilla, but it's somewhere in that direction, I think. It's the creaminess that it imparts to the dishes. So for that reason, it's very popular as a flavoring agent. Now here in the Philippines as well, you'll often see it used to flavor kakanin. So suman in particular is known for being a pandan flavored rice cake. It's a very simple white sugar, glutinous rice, and then pandan leaf flavored when you're cooking that up. If you buy pandan extract in a store, it's always like green color, but typically that's just food coloring lang yun. It's actually typically not that like bright green, maybe very, very mild green when you actually look at the extract, but the store-bought ones always like make it look like it's a really dark green, but they're kind of greenwashing it a little bit there. So that was my introductory video into some of the commonly used Filipino herbs and spices. spices that I cook with the most while I'm here in Manila. What did you guys think? Please leave your comment below on anong mga favorite o mga flavoring agent dito sa Philippine cooking. And also, if there's anything I missed from the list or you'd like me to cover next time, we'll find out. We'll tell the world about it. You can leave your comments below. Remember, you can follow us at Facebook, and if you check the page, we have some contests and giveaways going on this year. So every time we're releasing a cooking video, we're doing some prize giveaways where you can win a bunch of free stuff. Don't forget to subscribe. We will see you guys next time. I'm Chris Urbano, and we're bringing you food and fun from the Philippines. Bye now.